Hello and good evening, everyone. I'm glad anybody who's on our team's meeting today, I appreciate your participation. We've got a couple ground rules here today. Again, if you saw in the chat box, if you have a comment or a question, please put your comment and question in the chat box there. We have muted everyone. We are going to get through the presentation and we will open it up to the group for comments, and we will answer the comments and questions as they come in. With me today, I have a representative from the city of Delray Beach, Daisy, as well as several WGI members from the design team, including Brett Olford, the vice president and head of our civil group. And I have Mr. Stephen Cherry, the vice president and the project manager for the Marine Way project. So again, good evening. I'm glad everybody's here, and I'm glad to be here myself. So today is the Marine Way Public Outreach Meeting. We are going to have two meetings today. One is going to be a Teams meeting, which we are participating in now, and at 6 o'clock we will have an in-person meeting here at the Recreation Center here in Veterans Park. So with that, I'm going to start the presentation. And as I said, I've got several people here from WGI, other members of our team. And we have a geotechnical firm, or a local firm, Tierra, South Florida. The pump station is designed by Mock Roos and Associates. They're also a local firm here that has done dozens and dozens of pump stations throughout South Florida, including clients for the South Florida Water Management District, the Lake Worth Drainage District, Northern Palm Beach County Improvement District, and many, many other more. And Liz Perez from our Collective Water, she did our stormwater modeling for this project. So Marine Way, the location. If you don't know where Marine Way is, I will, kind of give you a description of Marine Way. It is located along the Intercoastal in the downtown Delray Beach area. It's located between Veterans Park to the north and Atlantic Avenue to the north and the City Marina to the south. It is along the Marine Way is several residential units there and some private docks. So why are we here today? As you all interested in the project itself and what it's going to do for not only the residents along Marine Way, but residents in general for the city of Delray Beach. As you know, it experiences frequent flooding during rainfall events, high tide events, and king tide events. This is kind of one of the poster child that the news puts on the TV when we get a king tide event. There's also a road up in West Palm Beach that's also frequently on the news when we have king tides. It's a very low road. The seawall is in disrepair and non-functioning. So basically, the seawall was built many years ago. We don't know when it was built, but it's literally a rock revetment seawall that's lower than the road, so it doesn't hold back any water. It really doesn't function at all as a seawall. So that is going to be one of the improvements that we're going to make to this. The roadway is in disrepair because of the frequent flooding from king tides and king tides and high tides. The sub base is affected every king tide and high tide, and again, with the traffic on it, it just starts falling apart. And you can see from the picture on the upper left-hand corner there, the pavement cracking, and basically it's falling into the intercoastal waterway along the mangroves there. And another challenge we have is the existing mangroves are located along the intercoastal waterway. Because they are an endangered species, we have to be very cognizant of their location. We have to be cognizant of disturbing them. And so again, anything that we do during the design and permitting of this project, the mangroves have to be kept in mind, so we are not just disturbing those. I added a picture here on the bottom. This was a picture taken during Hurricane Dorian. Hurricane Dorian, as you remember, was out over the Bahamas. It looked like it was heading towards South Florida here, but during a king tide event, the storm was over the Bahamas and the winds were blowing anywhere from 40 to 50 miles an hour into the intercoastal here. And at that same time, there was a king tide event. And so I've been down there many different times during king tide events, and this was probably one of the worst flooding. This is the worst flooding I've seen on Marine Way because of the different effects that were bringing the water into the road, the storm out bringing 40, 50 miles an hour wind and the king tide. So again, this is a very good picture of what not only you see now, but I think we're going to see more and more in the future as the tides rise and we get more and more extreme storm events. So what are we going to propose to do to alleviate that flooding? We're going to be doing several things here. This is a very intricate project, a project that takes into different aspects, including the pump stations. We're going to be raising the seawall, and we're going to be doing pedestrian improvements. And one of the main things we're going to be doing is the seawall. We're going to be raising that to a minimum elevation of 4.2. That is corresponds with the city's criteria for any seawall bulkhead that is either replaced or constructed. It has to be raised to a minimum of 4.2 feet. The proposed road elevation is going to be raised to elevation 2. Now, to give you a perspective on what 4.2 feet is, if you go out there now and you're familiar with Marine Way, the road is approximately 1.5 feet. So we are going to be adding almost 3 feet of elevation to that wall from the existing road. So there'll be a significant increase in the wall. We're going to be adding a stormwater pump station and a backup generator. And some of you may ask why we're doing that. Well, in the past, when it rained, water would go down from the roads to the west of this project and just drain over the existing seawall and into the intercoastal. There really wasn't anything that was picking up the stormwater, nothing holding it back. So once we put in a wall, we're going to need to put a pump station in. And then we're putting a backup generator in because, again, when storms hit, what usually happens is the power goes out. So if the power goes out, the stormwater pump station will still function with the backup generator. We're going to be putting in a shared use path between Veterans Park and the city marina. It's going to be a paver brick walkway with curb and gutter, and we're going to be adding drainage to it. Any water and sewer utilities under Marine Way, we're going to be replacing those. We're going to add pedestrian lighting, so it makes it a safe place to walk and stroll after, say, a nice dinner out on Atlantic Avenue. Walk down there, and you can walk from the north part of Veterans Park all the way to the south, the city marina, and feel comfortable. Also, we are going to be addressing the tunnel that's under Atlantic Avenue. That will take people from Veterans Park south to Marine Way or vice versa from Marine Way to Veterans Park. And we are going to making sure that's well lit so pedestrians can go back and forth and feel safe. We're going to be adding wayfinding signage for people that go down there and not familiar with the area so they can find their way to the north or to the south. And again, to make it aesthetically pleasing, we are going to be adding landscaping and hardscape improvements along Marine Way. The Marine Way is the third phase of a 3-phase project the city has undertaken over the past several years to address the rising tides and the constant flooding along this stretch of the intercoastal waterway from the marina north to Veterans Park. Veterans Park was the first phase of this project. It was completed in 2018. That project consisted of raising the seawall to alleviate the flooding in the park during king tide and high tide events. The seawall was at such an elevation that if boats came by, the wakes would run up into the park and destroy the park and the landscaping, et cetera. So again, that was alleviated by raising the seawall in Veterans Park back in 2018. The next phase was the city marina. The project there included the raising of the seawall and the docks, again, to address the constant flooding that the city marina experienced during extreme high tide and king tide events. So now we're at the third phase, Marine Way. And what are we going to do with Marine Way? The first thing, we're going to do, and it may not be the first thing that we do during construction, but one of the main things that we're going to be doing is in constructing the seawall to elevation 4.5 from the bridge abutment on Atlantic Avenue South to where the improvements stop at the city marina. So that wall will be one connected wall at the same elevation from the south side of the city marina all the way up to Atlantic Avenue. As I mentioned before, stormwater pump station is going to be constructed, and that is going to be the location of the stormwater pump station, where there's such a grassed area right now. And we can talk, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in my presentation here. The next thing we are going to be doing is a backup generator and relocate the city's marina electrical cabinet. Again, the generator is there, so when storm events hit and the power goes out, the pump station will work. We heard from residents, they did not like where the electrical panel was located, that we did during the city marina project, and that is highlighted in red here on this graphic here. So what we are going to do during the Marine Way project is relocate that electric panel to the south to the corner of Southeast 2nd Street and Marine Way. And again, I have some graphics depicting what that will look like in the future. We're going to be adding and improving the roadway. We're going to raise the roadway. We're going to make it a shared use roadway, both for vehicles and pedestrians, to get from Southeast 1st Street in the marina north to Veterans Park. We're going to be adding drainage improvements to pick up the water that is flowing behind the seawall and pump it and collect it into the stormwater pump station and pump it out into the intercoastal. We're going to be also including water and sewer improvements along Marine Way. So how do we get to where we are and why we have a cross section and that we have now? I'm going to show a cross section of the design that we are currently permitting and designing. But this is what Marine Way looked like in the past. It's a very narrow roadway, barely 2 cars could get through it. On the west side of the road was a parking area, driveway area, not very well defined. There was a lot of water sitting in that area there after rainstorm events. It couldn't get out because there was no drainage in that area. Of course, the mangroves were there. And the seawall, as you see here in yellow, again, it was very low, didn't really act as a seawall. And then there was the private docks that were owned by the adjacent property owners to the west of the intercoastal waterway. So during that charrette, this was back in 2019, we had here in the recreation center here in Veterans Park, we had residents come here. We gave a presentation and we asked them for their input. And we had a hands-on exercise here where people could move things around. We got comments from the public. What do you want here? What would you like to see here? What would you not want to see here? What are your main concerns? So we collected all that information. And as you can see, there are several things here that the residents wanted or didn't want. And there was 3 main things that we made sure we took into account. We saved the mangroves, which was challenging, but again, we're saving the mangroves in the new design. We're leaving the private docks. It was very important for those property owners to keep those docks. And then they wanted the roadway, they wanted some type of paver type brick roadway to enhance the look of Marine Way. But many of the other components along that and on this graph here, we took into account as well. Street calming, stormwater flooding, sewer system upgrades. So a lot of these things that we took into account. So we did listen to the public then, and we incorporated your comments into the design. So after that, we came up with, and we are moving forward with the design of the Marine Way improvements, which are shown here on this graph. Starting from the left-hand side, the west right-of-way, we're going to be putting in 8 feet of parallel parking, and that's going to be turf block paver parking. So when you drive on it's not going to cause ruts and puddles there. It's going to be a solid surface, but again, it will allow grass to grow through it and it makes it more a better looking parking area than just grass. We didn't want to put pavement in there because of we wanted to leave the area open for storage and for stormwater retention. Shared use vehicle pedestrian access, that's Marine Way. We wanted to create a roadway that was not only accessible to the local residents there, but also people walking along Marine Way. So again, we have lights and landscaping there to make it a pleasant walk. We're going to raise the seawall with transitions for private docks. I have a video I'm going to show that shows that seawall. The maximum elevation we're raising is 6 feet, but at the minimum elevation we are going to be raising is 4.2, and those are going to be the areas where the private docks are. And again, I've got a video that shows that seawall and how that is to be designed so the private dock owners can have access to their docks. And again, we're leaving the existing mangroves in docks in place. Those are private docks. And the mangroves, again, are a endangered vegetative species, so we're leaving those in place. So here is a video that we made that will give you an idea of what Marine Way will look like. This is going north from Southeast 2nd Street toward Atlantic Avenue. Southeast 1st Street, yeah. So as you can see on the seawall to the right, the lower areas are where the private docks are. The seawall, where it's the highest, is elevation 6.0, but again, the minimum elevation is 4.2. As you can see, the light fixtures are similar to the light fixtures you see around the city with the acorn lamps. We've added landscaping, enhanced, so you just don't see a blank wall. We've added curb and gutter to enhance the drainage and pick up the drainage along Marine Way. And again, we have the parallel parking for the local residents along the road. And if you're again familiar with this area and you want to kind of know where the right of way is, there is a line of royal palm trees that is pretty much the right of way line, the west right of way line of Marine Way. And through our surveys and right-of-way work, we've delineated that right-of-way there. And again, it pretty much falls along the path of those royal palms there. Now, this is a depiction of the generator. This is looking south from Marine Way, and it's at the intersection of Marine Way and Southeast 2nd Street. As you can see, we are going to be landscaping the backup generator so that it is out of view and won't be obtrusive. And we put it in the corner south of the Dock Masters building there, so it's out of the way of the residents that live along that section of Marine Way. And here's another view of the generator looking to the east toward the Intercoastal from Southeast 2nd Street. Again, we are going to be buffering the generator with landscaping. Off to the left there, you see the Dock Masters building that's there now. This is a depiction of the pump station. So you're going to say, okay, where's the pump station? Well, the pump station is going to be underground here. So you will see a few panels and concrete panels that are above ground there that's shown in the depiction in the grass here there, but the entire pump station is underground. So what I'm showing here, what we're showing here in the dark gray and the people are standing on it are the outfall pipes. To the left are the outfall pipes for the stormwater pump station. There are 3 40 cubic feet per second pumps underground that will be pumping the stormwater out of this area. And then on the right, where the 3 people are standing on the dark gray area, that under that area there, we had to accommodate for a 60-inch FDOT pipe coming from the west that drained the area east and west of Federal Highway. So there's a large pipe draining that area through here. There's also some water main under this structure here that we had to accommodate for. So what we did, instead of just putting up the wall, we made it a feature so people could go out and take a walk out there and stand out there and enjoy the view of the intercoastal. And that is at the corner of Marine Way and Southeast 2nd Street. This is looking west, and the marina to the left. So this next slide here is basically showing the level of service that we're going to be providing for with the improvements here. The exhibits on the left and the exhibits on the right are based on what improvements are out there currently. Basically, no improvements, existing conditions. The graphic on the left is the current condition, and the graphic on the right is in 30 years, estimated 30 years. So right now, without any improvements, without the wall going in during a storm, 5-year, 24-hour storm event, this is the type of flooding that you can expect in that area. And again, it's not only along Marine Way, but it's within the neighborhoods to the west of this. Now, if there's nothing done, no improvements made, no seawall put in, no pump station constructed, this is what will happen based on NOAA's estimate of king tide, high tide events in 30 years. So as you can see, you're going to be experiencing approximately 2 to 3 feet of flooding along Marine Way and 2 feet within some of the neighborhoods to the west of Marine Way. So again, something needs to be done, and the city is addressing that with the Marine Way project. The next exhibit is with the proposed improvements. Again, this is showing the current condition with the proposed improvements, the pump station in, the seawall in. And again, you're going to see there's going to be areas, because the area is so flat, you're going to see some areas that will have experienced water standing and out there, and there's going to be some water during these rainfall events. But the good thing about it is, in the current or in the proposed condition with the pump station and the seawall, the duration and depth of the water sitting in Marine Way and in the neighborhoods will be less, because we're going to be pumping that water out. Right now, there's no way to really pump the water out. It just sits there until the ground, it goes through the groundwater and finds its way out. On the right-hand side is, again, in 30 years from now. As you can see, this is addressing a 5-year, 24-hour storm in 30 years based on NOAA's prediction of what king tides and high tide events will be. You know, one note I want to add to this is the seawall, both in the Marina, Veterans Park, and Marine Way, are designed to add an additional 18 inches of concrete to the top of it. So the walls have been constructed to take the additional weight of 18 inches of concrete above the 4.2 feet. So in the future, if the tide events get more extreme, et cetera, without having to redo the wall, we can add 18 inches of concrete to the top of these walls. And hopefully that will take us further on into the future than hopefully we can expect. So I can't estimate that, but we all know what's going on in the world here. So what's next? Right now, we are finalizing our design and construction phase. We are looking at the construction and looking at ways we can address the construction so it doesn't disrupt the neighborhood. It will allow people to have access to their homes, and they won't be without having access to their homes. There's going to be a lot of disruptions, I can tell you that. But, you know, this is a significant project, but it's going to get significant results. So a lot of people are going to need to be patient that live along there. But again, once it's finished, it's going to be beautiful. We're in the middle of obtaining permits from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the South Florida Water Management District. Those permits have been submitted back in 2022, and we are working through the permitting process and the comment process with these two agencies. And we need to get a site plan and historic preservation board approval through the city of Delray Beach, and that is being planned in the near future. So the plan will have to go before site plan review committee and the historic preservation board for approval. One of the things I didn't bring up earlier is this is located within a historical district. So there are certain aspects of the project that have to adhere to the historical regulations of the city. We're in the process of applying for state funding assistance, and the application is under review. So let's cross our fingers and we get that funding assistance. And finally, once this project is finalized, the design's finalized, the dollars are all added up, the city staff is going to need to go before the city commission and request that within the city's capital improvement program, funds be made available during fiscal year 2023, 2024 for this project. And with that, I'm going to finalize my presentation here. And again, we will open it up, or we will address some of the comments that we received during the presentation. And with me today, I said I have a representative from the city. Daisy is here, and she is the PM for the city on this project. She's doing a wonderful job. And from WG, I have Brett Olford and Stephen Cherry. Again, thank you for listening to the presentation and looking forward to the comments. Thank you.
Okay, Brian, we've got a couple questions in the chat. The first one from Scott Jones: will the stormwater inverts be raised as well as the seawall? Otherwise, the water will percolate out the roadway drains as they do now.
Yeah, Scott, I'll address that. So the stormwater inlets are going to be raised with the raise in the roadway. In addition to that, they're going to be direct piped into the wet well for the stormwater pump station. So that should eliminate any kind of collecting in the stormwater pipes and percolation out of the inlets and into the roadway.
Okay, the next question is, since it is already a dead end without a proper turnaround at the end of deck 84, how will you allow for vehicle circulation?
Thank you, Angela. So correct, the Marine Way kind of dies or ends right south of deck 84. We are designing a T turnaround, or a 90-degree turnaround. So residents living along Marine Way will not have drivers making 3-point turns in their driveway. We're also working with deck 84 for an emergency and service vehicle access through their property. It will be for emergency vehicle use only, so it'll be blocked off to the majority of the public, or to all of the public. So as you drive north along Marine Way to deck 84, there will be a designed turnaround point at the end of it. And then the only people who are allowed to drive through deck 84 will be emergency access.
Okay, thank you. So the next question that we have in the chat, you said that parallel parking will be for residents. Will it be permit only to keep others that have continuously tried to park on the roadway away?
Correct. Yes, the parallel parking will be marked for permit only parking.
And the next question, I did not see, this one's from Barbara. I did not see the electrical panel on the slides. Where will this be? Will it be next to the generator?
Yes, I don't know if you caught up my presentation, the electrical panel that's in the center of the city marina right now, we are going to be relocating that all the way to the very south end of the city marina, south of the dock master in the corner of the marina at the southeast corner of Southeast 2nd Street and Marine Way. So we will be moving that to get it out of the view of the Intercoastal Waterway.
Okay, and the next question is, when will the project start and when should we expect completion?
Yeah, I'll address that question. Thanks, Angela. So right now we're going through the permitting process with the Corps of Engineers. The Corps of Engineers process can be a lengthy one. So it's largely determined on the regulatory review process from the Corps of Engineers and South Florida Water Management District. But the expectation now is to be in construction in 2024. And I see there's a follow-on question about the traffic and banning traffic. Since it is a public street, we can't put any physical block there. But what we're doing is, because we're going with the paver brick roadway, we're also going to put a band of header curb there just to show a visual differentiator between the asphalt on First and the paver brick on Marine Way. And then we'll also try to handle it by signage as well, restricting rideshare and in vehicles like that to try to reduce the traffic flow on Marine Way.
Okay, and the next question, is this project contingent on state funding?
For that next question, we're going to unmute Missy to respond to that.
Can you hear me now? Okay, I can hear myself down the hall, so I'm sure you can. So the answer to that question is that we are applying for state funds to offset the cost of this project, as it is quite expensive. And as soon as we know whether those funds are in or not, then we can make an intelligent decision on how we're going to move forward with the phasing of this project. So that decision on exactly how it's going to be funded has not been made yet.
Stephen, the next question is directed at you. If through traffic for emergency vehicles only is for emergency vehicles only, how will it be controlled to keep non-compliant vehicles from using it as through traffic access to Deck 84?
Thank you for the follow-up to the original question. So we won't be able to restrict users down Marine Way because it is a public road. So the thing Brett just mentioned is that we're going to emphasize the difference in appearance between the public road along City Marina and then the drive down Marine Way through curbing and the decorative paver bricks shared use pathway. And I understand now that, people are driving down there. They're not really getting through access because they cannot drive through to Deck 84. They do turnarounds, as I've seen while I was out doing field visits. So again, instead of having rideshare or people trying to get a shortcut to Deck 84 doing 3-point turns within residents' driveways, we will provide the turnaround location or turnaround area in the event that someone disobeys all signs and still drives down the road. The entrance to Marine Way, along up to Deck 84 will look substantially different than it does now. And we've incorporated that into the design, taking into account that high use drive-through traffic does utilize Marineway. Okay, so I'll take the next one as well. You live on Marineway, and signage all the way from Deck 84 to Second would be appreciated. Thank you for that. Yep, we're going to sign everything we can within reason to both direct traffic and then limit traffic as well. And then, as Brian said earlier, we want to emphasize people to use the underpass under the Atlantic Bridge. So there will be a heightened emphasis on signage for people to use that. Okay. And then there's the question, will the water pipes, et cetera, over to the barrier island and this side be done as part of this project? So the answer is, Missy's hand just come up, or is that from before? Okay. Missy, if you'd like to speak, you're.
No,
you're
go
muted.
ahead and answer, Steve. That's fine.
Oh, okay. So will the water pipes over to the barrier island as well as the mainland be done as part of this project? The answer is, they will be protected. That we are not going to reconstruct the 16-inch water main nor the AT&T legacy copper cables that cross at the end of Southeast First Street to the barrier island. I think it's G. Barbara, we see that your hand is raised in the Teams meeting, but we also have seen that you're posting questions. Do you have something you'd like to discuss now, or type a new question, or have we addressed your questions?
I want to comment further on the question regarding the turnaround at the north end of Marineway. That situation happens a lot, where you have dead end streets and fire and police access need to be maintained. So there are certain things that you can do to make it so that vehicles can transverse that property, but not look like a road. So for instance, you could put in paver grasscrete blocks, and that looks like it's just grass, but only the police and fire know that's an access there. And also removable bollards in there. So again, there's different things that you can do so people don't see that it looks like a road, but the fire and the police department do know that's the road there, and they can travel on it without, getting bogged down in the grass or something like that. So again, this situation happens a lot in different developments where you have a dead end situation. So again, that will be addressed, and we understand those concerns.
Okay, we've got one more question here. If the project is somewhat contingent on state funding, when will we know the project is firm? Missy, if
should
you're
have
maybe
some-
available to unmute yourself and respond.
Yeah, we will have some more firm answers on the actual funding and phasing of the project as we move into this the FY24 budgeting process for the capital improvement budget. So that'll be during the summer. We'll start to develop those capital improvement budgets, and it'll be finalized somewhere in the neighborhood of September.
Okay, does anybody have any more questions? Or I see we've got somebody typing in a response. Is there anyone else who I can unmute you if you wanted to speak, or just raise your hand and I can do that. Otherwise, type in your comment in the chat. And follow-up question from Adam about the timing. When is a realistic start date?
Yeah, this is Missy again. I would love to give you an actual start date for this project. I wish that we could start it tomorrow, but the reality of it is that we have to get all of the funding in place prior to. So until I have that complete funding question answered, I don't want to jump to a conclusion and say that we're going to start this in the fall and then not be able to keep our word.
Yeah, and Missy's correct. And in addition to the funding, obviously the regulatory permitting side is always a question, especially when you're in such a sensitive area and have the mangroves and the interface with the intracoastal as well. So again, as Brian mentioned, we started that permitting process in 2022. We're going to continue to work through it in an expeditious fashion, but our hands are largely the project is largely in the hands of the regulatory agencies.
Barbara, I see you've got your hand raised. Can you unmute yourself on do you know how to hit the little mic? There you go.
Okay, thanks. I'm still concerned about the water that's been undercutting the section of road, between at Deck 84 and down. I don't really understand how you can not be addressing that. I mean, it sounds like everyone's just going to leave what's underneath there, the infrastructure. Well, what if they get in there and they find the infrastructure's a total disaster? Will someone say, yeah, we need to fix that now?
Yeah, Barbara, thanks for the question. Okay, so when Stephen mentioned earlier that we're going to protect the power source to the barrier island as well as the water main going to the barrier island,
Yeah.
up by Deck 84 and down to the city marina, all of that water, sewer and stormwater infrastructure is going to be replaced as part of this project.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Great.
Yeah, one of the reasons is we're going to be driving sheet pile for the new seawall. So again, the having an aged infrastructure there, it's imperative that when we're reconstructing that entire road and doing this kind of disruption, put new infrastructure as far as utilities are concerned in. And yes, that is absolutely part of the project.
So that includes the part underneath the water going over to the east, correct? I mean, the pipes don't just
say that one
stop
more
on
time.
our side. The pipes go all the way across the water, right? Under
So
the water.
Between the city marina and
Yeah.
North Marine Way, there's a transect of the intracoastal waterway. That is their
Yeah.
main source for utilities. That
Okay.
would be a separate utility project that would be constructed, that would be taken by the utility department. However, as Stephen mentioned, we are making sure that we are protecting them through the interface with the new seawall. And so we leave that availability for them to have access in the future.
Okay. It just sounded to me like everything should be done at once.
As I understand, but especially when we're talking about now an extension of a utility, both power and water utilities over
Yeah.
to the barrier island,
Yeah.
there's a cost that's associated with that, and you know, we have to bite these off in realistic chunks here when we're talking about
Sure.
cost of infrastructure.
Yeah, just as long as you don't have to rip up what you've already put in.
No, and that's again one of the reasons why, if you noticed in the slides, the seawall, there's a large section of grate that's going in over that area that's removable, so the utility department can get access to that water main when they decide to replace that infrastructure.
Ah, excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any other questions, Angela? Okay, we're going to wrap this up. We have actually an in-person meeting here at 6 o'clock. Again, I appreciate everybody joining in and your comments. And again, if you don't have anything to do tonight, come down to the recreation center here in Veterans Park. We're here. We got pizza. We got some cookies and soda. We would love to have you come down and meet the team here. So thank you again and have a good evening.
And Brian, if you could just go back to that last slide of the presentation really quick. I just want to point out to everyone that this was recorded. We'll get the recording posted on the website there, resilientdelray.com, as well as Daisy's contact information. All the questions, answers will be posted there, as well as we'll be recording the meeting that we're holding here at 6 o'clock in person. So if you guys want to listen to that, and if any other additional questions come up, they'll be available on the website for your review. Yeah, we should have those posted probably by next week. Thank you guys all for attending. Have a great evening.